in the conversation I just had with Woj, and the story that he wrote, he talked about how Kyrie, because we can't get in his head, right? Like, maybe he's trying to use the Lakers as leverage with the taxpayer mid-level exemption. JJ, do you believe that's even possible? Like, do you think that's a real threat by Kyrie?
I can't get in Kyrie's head either. My gut tells me that Kyrie Irving will be in a Brooklyn Nets uniform to start next season. How we get there, I don't know. I don't know if that's opting out, re-signing a deal, signing an extension. I get why Kyrie Irving, a player of his stature, would not want stipulations in his contract. He is a max level talent. And Matt Barnes said that on the show yesterday. Kyrie is a max level talent. There's just so many questions right now about availability and reliability that I get the discomfort for the Nets in offering him that right now.
He's someone that loves the element of surprise. So I wouldn't be surprised if he signed for whatever another team is going to give him if that situation made him feel more comfortable. But the crazy thing to me is the Nets necessarily that we know haven't done anything to mess up. He's been doing more to them than they've been doing to him. They've rolled the red carpet out. They thought, like JJ said, this big, plan was to come and bring some championships to Brooklyn, to found a new foundation and a new team in that city. But it's kind of been him doing the issue. So to me, I don't understand why you would really want to leave Brooklyn in the first place. They've been nothing but welcoming. You got Kevin Durant over there with you. You got a great coach in Steve Nash, who can really, if he opened up his mind, probably help Kyrie out there on the court at some point. So really, again, it's really going to be up to Kyrie and him getting tired of us talking about him every single day until a decision's made. Because, again, the talent is unmatched, but sometimes talent isn't enough when you're trying to build something.
Matt, would you?
I was just going to jump in here, and I just wanted to point out, I agree completely with Matt that the best scenario for Kyrie is to remain as a Brooklyn Net and play alongside Kevin Durant. Joe Harris is back from an injury. Ben Simmons is back from an injury. They have a real chance to be a great basketball team next year if Kyrie Irving is on the floor. And the assumption is that he will be on the floor and available way more than he was this season and way more than he was in that first season. And obviously we could go down the list of all the different reasons why he's missed games, but you have to assume that he will be on the basketball floor for at least 60 to 70 games next season, and they have a real chance to be a good team.
We do need to start with the basketball news of the day, and I want to be clear, this is the basketball news of the day. Kyrie Irving, because Kevin Durant, he released a podcast today, and here is some of what was said by KD on how involved he will be on Irving's impending free agency. So he said, there's no involvement at all. I can't be involved with, this is this man's livelihood. This is much bigger than me. Being a free agent is one of the most important times in your career. That can't be swayed by anyone else. Nothing can happen right now. So I'm just going to let things play out, see where the chips fall where they may. It seems like that's what Kevin Durant is saying here. There's a lot to unpack, though, from those quotes. And don't worry, Perk, you're going to have the floor in just a little bit. But Woj, I do want to start with you here because you've been all over this story from the very beginning. Kevin Durant's basically saying out of this situation is out of his control, but what is his role in sort of all of this?
Well, listen, they went into free agency together 3 years ago and were very much connected in how they operated in free agency, came together, came to Brooklyn, got a deal for DeAndre Jordan at the same time, which when you look back didn't really make sense for where that franchise was, where Jared Allen was in his career. So they have impacted each other's free agency, and I do think Kevin Durant is going to impact, has an impact on how this goes with Kyrie Irving and the Nets. That's just how it goes in the NBA. When players partner together to go play somewhere or make a decision either to leave or to go forward together, they're doing it in a very connected way. So I think a great deal of this Kyrie Irving story is influenced by Kevin Durant and whether or not Kyrie Irving leaving will push Kevin Durant to ask the Brooklyn Nets for a trade. That's what we are talking about here if Irving goes.
You know what's crazy that I saw in Kevin Durant comments was when he talked about, basically it's Kyrie's personal decision and he can't persuade a man to go in a direction. Well, somebody persuade you. You went sit down and you had meetings with Golden State. They persuaded you to leave Oklahoma City when y'all had meetings in the Hamptons. So you're telling me a guy that you call, quote unquote, your brother, that you don't have an impact on his decision making far as him whether or not he want to opt into his contract on the team that y'all chose to join together, and then all of a sudden you come out on the podcast and say, hey, you know what, it's his decision. It's the most important time of his life. First of all, this is not Kyrie's first contract extension or, free agency or whatever you want to call it. So I don't get what Kevin Durant is saying. I don't understand why Kevin Durant don't hold Kyrie Irving accountable. That's the crazy thing to me.
Well, I understand completely what you're saying, and I think when you look at the Brooklyn Nets situation, and I've been there a ton, when both players decide to go there, and then when Kevin Durant signed that extension, everybody was like, oh, okay, well, Kevin Durant, he's the first domino to fall. You're like, obviously there was James Harden,
right.
There was some other dominoes, obviously, that needed to go, but you're looking at this as like, oh, well, once Kevin Durant signed, everything else is kind of like,
gonna work itself out from
and
there.
what I respected when Kevin Durant signed early, he was like, hey, this is the franchise that I'm going to be with. We're going to stop any other nonsense. I want to be here. And then obviously, Kyrie, then the James Harden situation started to happen. And so you're still looking at Kevin Durant as you're that dude. This franchise hinges on every decision that you're going to make. And so, hopefully the Nets are having conversations with him saying like, hey, these are our options. If he leaves, what are you doing? Because KD could obviously impact his decision and say, listen, if he leaves, I'm leaving too. And now it's like, for me, if you're Kyrie, the fact that he's trying to stay out of it implies that he's more committed to the Nets than he is to Kyrie.
Well, one, how can Kyrie Irving have the audacity to have a wish list, right? Like, how can you present an organization that you have been disrespectful to since the time you have arrived? Not showing up to practice, not sending out a text or giving people a phone call, disrespecting your head coach, disrespecting your teammates at times. And then on top of that, right, we all think, and Bobby, that was a great point, about the right thing for Kyrie Irving to do is to sign back to Brooklyn. We all know the right thing, but when we go right, Kyrie Irving goes left. So now you got to put yourself in Kyrie Irving's mind and his brain. And he don't really care about a lot of things that we're talking about, saying, oh, the common sense to tell you, opt into your contract, play with Kevin Durant, make $30+ million next season, don't turn that down, or go play with LeBron James for $6 million. I think he should actually go play with LeBron James, to be honest with you. When I look at it, when he was playing with LeBron in Cleveland, their playoff record was 39-13. We haven't really seen Kyrie Irving play consistent elite basketball at a high level for a long period, expanded period of time since playing alongside LeBron James.
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, Kyrie Irving is a max player.
Yeah.
But on a year-to-year basis. I mean, that's and you know how the NBA works. Like, Brooklyn's trying to do something that's unique, signing a player to a max contract on a short term, or maybe games played in years 3 and 4, incentive based on the end. And if you're Kyrie Irving, you're looking at still like the player that was in Cleveland, that was in Boston, that is a 4 or 5 year guy, and there's not many options out there for him. There's not many teams that are willing to commit 4 years to him, even if in a sign and trade. The sign and trade rules is that it's a minimum of 3 years in a deal. Like, you can't do a sign and trade and say it's a 1 year contract. So there's a lot of complexities to it. But as I said, he's a max player, but on a year-to-year basis.
About whether or not then there would be an exit at the same time. Bobby, before we go to break, what would a package, and this is purely hypothetical, if we're looking at Kevin Durant, what would a package even look like?
I think if you're Sean Marks, you look at the top 25 players under the age of 25 and say, do I want a Zion Williamson? Do I want Mikal Bridges and DeAndre Ayton? I'm just hypotheticals here. That's the players I'm looking at as far as just going down. Am I looking at Memphis's roster with all those young players outside of Ja Morant? You're not looking for players in that, DeMar DeRozan and, Nikola Vucevic. You're looking at young players to build around.
And what would make a potential Kevin Durant trade really unique is he's got 4 years left on his contract. And that makes virtually every team in the league willing to get involved, again, because if you trade for him, he has to play for you. He's got to perform. And so it opens up the when a player's got 1 or 2 years left, you're limited. Teams in small markets know if we trade for him, he's probably going to walk.
The only question I have is, if Kyrie does opt out and go someplace else, what are the options that the Brooklyn Nets have to then pair Kevin Durant up with someone in free agency or something? Like, are their options completely gone if he leaves?
You're right at the salary cap.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where you're looking at. You have Ben Simmons and Durant combined to make $80 million. Joe Harris, the list goes on as far as where you're at.
They need to get Patty Mills to opt back into his contract. That's an important factor for this Nets team.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this all so fascinating. We will continue to be